Greetings, fellow tech gurus. We are going to be setting up a web server on a Raspberry Pi that will be capable of hosting a WordPress website. I haven't done any extensive benchmark testing, so I can't give you an exact answer on how well a WordPress website will perform on the Raspberry Pi. Since a WordPress website relies heavily on a database, it will consume more resources than what a static website would. Depending on how much traffic the website does get, that will play a factor as well as far as performance goes. But as long as your WordPress website isn't getting tons of traffic and you have a decent internet connection, you should be just fine hosting a WordPress website on the Raspberry Pi. Alright, so to start off, we need to download the Raspbian operating system. And we want to download the light version. Now, using the light version will give us a lightweight web server, which will consume less resources than the standard version would. Since we will be hosting a WordPress site, we want to ensure that we keep our RAM and CPU usage to a minimum. So let's go ahead and download that. And then while that's downloading, we will need to download Win32 Disk Imager. So you can go ahead and download that as well. And then you will need SD card formatter. Alright, now that we have our Raspbian disk image downloaded, and then you should have it extracted to a folder of your choice, we can go ahead and open up Win32 Disk Imager and SD card formatter. First, we'll need to use SD card formatter and format the SD card. So you want to make sure that you select the correct drive. And when you have the drive selected, we can click the format button. And then we can exit that. And then we'll need to use Win32 Disk Imager to write the disk image to the SD card. So we will want to select our drive, and then we will open up our file. And I extracted my image to the Documents folder. We can see it here, so we will select that. And now that we have the disk image selected, we can just click the Write button. And then this process will just take a few minutes. Alright, now we have that completed. We can click Exit. And now you can pop that SD card into your Raspberry Pi. Alright, now I'm going to connect to my Raspberry Pi remotely through SSH. If you plan on doing this, you'd have to download PuTTY. And then I'm going to connect using the IP address. And then the default username for the Raspbian operating system is Pi. And then the password is Raspberry. And since this is the light version, there is no graphical user interface. It's just the terminal here. And to go over this real quick, if you want to use SSH, all you need to do is run raspbian-config. Just go down to interfacing options, and then go to SSH, and then click enable. And then I already have it enabled, and then as soon as it is enabled, go to finish. And then to find your IP address, just type in ifconfig, and then this would be your IP address to connect to through PuTTY. Alright, now I'm going to enable root, and then we'll set the password for the root user. And now we can switch to root. Alright, now we will update everything. And next we will upgrade. Alright, now we can check and see if the firmware needs to be updated. We have to install it first though. And now we can run it. Alright, now we will reboot. And then we can just close this out and start a new session. Alright, now we can install Nginx. And we can actually check if the installation was successful by navigating to the IP address of the Raspberry Pi. And we can see here that it was successful. Alright, next we will edit our hosts file. And we want to change the IP address of the Raspberry Pi from this to the IP address that it is. And this is mine. And then we can save the file. Now if you don't know your IP address, like I said, you can just use the ifconfig command. And then you can see your IP address right there. And now we will edit another file. And we want to set this to auto rather than manual. And then we will want to use a static IP address. And that's the IP of the Raspberry Pi. And then gateway is actually the IP of our router. Now if you are not sure what your settings are, you can go and check out the details of your internet connection and find out what these values are. And then we'll scroll down below and we will actually comment these out. These are related to the Wi-Fi, and we're not using Wi-Fi. We want to use Ethernet because we'll get faster speeds. And then after that's completed, we can save the file. And then we will go ahead and restart the network. And then it's always a good idea to synchronize the system clock with NTP, so we can check that out. Now this will ensure that your system time will always be in sync. Alright, next we will install PHP and the APC cache package. And now we will install MySQL Server and PHPMyAdmin. And then we'll set a password for the root user. And we are using Nginx, so we don't want to check either one of these. So we will just continue. And then we will select yes for this. And then enter a password. And now we will create a symlink to where phpMyAdmin is installed so that it's pointed to the web folder. Alright, now we need to edit a file. We want MySQL to listen on all interfaces, not just localhost. So we find the line here that says bind address, and we are going to comment that out and then save the file. And then we can restart MySQL. And now we will edit another file. And in this section here, we need to add index.php so that it supports our PHP files. And then we can save the file. Alright, let's actually go back into that same file because I forgot to make changes to the PHP section. So right here we want to uncomment these sections, and then we can save the file, and then we can restart Nginx. And now we can check to see if phpMyAdmin is working. By using our IP address and then /phpMyAdmin. And then we can see here that it is working. Alright, now we can make a directory for our website. Now just keep in mind that the domain name here, you can change that to the domain name that you are using. Alright, now we will change ownership for the file, or the directory. And now we will navigate to our directory that we created. And then we will install WordPress. And then if we use the ls command, we can see that our WordPress installation is right there. So what we'll do is actually move all the contents that are inside the WordPress directory. We will move them to the location of this directory here. And then we can see now that all of the files are located in this directory rather than the WordPress directory. And then we can actually remove the WordPress directory. And then we can remove the other file as well. And then we are just left with the WordPress files. Alright, now that we have that completed, we will go into phpMyAdmin, and then we will log in. And the first thing we need to do is create a database and a user for our website. So we will go to add user, and then we will choose a username, and then this is going to be on localhost, and then we will put a password in. And then down here we want to create a database with the same name and grant all privileges. And then we can click the Go button. And then it says here that we have a new user and our database is located here. Alright, now we need to make some changes to the Nginx configuration files in order for it to work with WordPress. So we will navigate to the default file. And now we can open up the default file. So first we will edit this section here. Alright, now we need to add another section. Now I will include this file on either the comment section or on our website, so you can go ahead and grab this information there. And then we'll be adding another section. And now we need to add to this section here. Alright, and that should about do it. Now keep in mind that this configuration file is for WordPress websites. So if you're going to put any other websites on this server that's not a WordPress site, that this file here will actually have to be edited. This configuration file is going to allow your WordPress website to be optimized for speed. So now that we have this file configured, we can save it. Alright, and now we can check to see if our configurations are correct. and it says that everything is okay. So now we will restart Nginx. Alright, now we need to edit another configuration file. Alright, so we'll need to make some changes to the basic settings. Alright, then we can save the file. And then we can check and see if there's any errors again. And we are good. Then we will restart Nginx. And now we can copy that default configuration file to our website directory. Let's try that again. Apparently that doesn't want to work. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. Alright, it looks like I was putting in CD rather than copy. We want to copy it. There we go. Alright, now we will go ahead and open up that file. Alright, so we need to make just a few changes to this configuration file. First, we need to remove default server. And then we need to scroll down and change our root directory. And then we'll need to add to the server name. Alright, now we can save the file. Control X, Y, enter. And once more we will make sure that there are no issues with Nginx. And then we will restart the service. And now we need to enable the server block by creating a symbolic link. And then we will restart Nginx again. Alright, now that we have everything configured, we can actually test it and see if we can bring up our website. So we'll navigate to our IP address, and then / followed by the directory that we created. And we can see here that WordPress is ready to go. So we can click the Let's Go button. And then we'll put in our database name that we created, along with the username and the password. And then we'll change our table prefix to something more randomized. And then we'll click Submit. Alright, now this is saying that it cannot write to the WP configuration file. This is because we haven't set up permissions for that. So instead, what we'll do is just copy and paste this. And then we will open up our configuration file. And then after we have that pasted, we'll save it. Control X, Y, and enter. Alright, now we enter the site title and then a username with our password, and then email address. And this here will discourage search engines from indexing the website. This is always recommended until you actually have the website finished. So we'll discourage for now. Then install. Alright, and after you finish the WordPress setup, you should be directed to your dashboard. And this confirms that it is working. Now the next step is pointing the actual domain name to the Raspberry Pi itself, so that instead of accessing the website locally using the IP address, you can just type in the URL. Now I am currently using a Belkin AC1200. All routers have different configurations and a different interface, so your screen might look a lot different than mine does. But down here I have the option, log in first, I have the option of creating a virtual DMZ host. Now what this does is it specifies a device on the network to be placed outside of the router's firewall. So it'll show the static IP address here. This is my public IP address. And then we apply the IP address of the Raspberry Pi here. So how it works is when the public IP is accessed, it points to our Raspberry Pi. So what I would do is save that, and then I would navigate to the location where my domain name is. And in my case, I purchased it from GoDaddy. So I would come here and sign in. And then I would click on Manage to select the domain name that I want to configure. And then I will select our domain name and go to the DNS zone file. And then down here it shows what the IP address is that this domain name is pointing to. And we want this IP address to be our public IP address. So we can go ahead and edit that. And then we'll put in our public IP address. And if you don't know your public IP address, you can open up a web browser and just type in "what's my IP," and it'll display your IP up at the top of the screen. So after you have your public IP address in there, you can save it. And then what that's going to do is that when somebody accesses your domain name, it's going to point to your public IP, which in turn is pointed to your Raspberry Pi, because those are the settings that we configured in the router settings for the virtual DMZ host. Well, I suppose that about does it for this video. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe to the channel and check out the website for more information. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the comment section below.